We're going to begin our Knot Tying Essentials playlist with the rolling hitch, one of my favorites. And just for ease of viewing, we're going to begin with directions and have discussion taking up most of the video towards the end. So just be prepared for that. If you have any questions about my selection for the essentials list, just wait until I get to the explanation first. Okay. Cut. We're assuming that my fingers here represent a bar, that there's a great weight on this side, and I'm going to be pulling it this way, or that it's just some horizontal piece of bar that I am attaching something to, and weight is going to be perpendicular. Okay, if I'm dragging it in the direction that I'm pointing, I'm going to want to make sure that I start in the direction that I'm going to be pulling it, wherever the direction of pull is going to go. Cross past once, and then a second time. This will allow it to bite down, and then finish with a half hitch right there. Snug it up, tighten. Now, you really don't want to let this middle piece flip to that side. That makes it much less secure. You want to keep it nice and well dressed right there. And now that we've got this tied, it will take perpendicular force quite nicely. It will take parallel force quite nicely. And if you were to pass this line underneath the middle here, now you have a symmetrical knot. Go on there. You have a symmetrical knot that's quite like a double overhand, and you can use both sides to take equal force, although it will lose its handy property. Here, let's go ahead and put it back, that it gains as being part of the clove hitch family. Namely, okay, we've got that nice and corrected there, that it pulls free after it's been slipped off the top of a bar. Now, there is another version that we need the assistance of the poor man's 3D printer, Lego, to really properly discuss. Cut. You can also tie a rolling hitch as a very special kind of adjusting loop. When it's tied this way, it's called a Tautline hitch. The process is exactly the same, but you're tying the line back upon itself, and this is where dressing it properly gets a little bit harder. Okay, so you've passed it in front, and notice that the weight is going to be this side in this case, because the knot here, you're going to want it to be able to take weight from both lines. Okay, cross past, and then the cross past the second time, and finish off with a half hitch on top. Now, the Tautline hitch is probably where I use the rolling hitch method the most, because it has some very interesting properties. Namely, it functions quite like a fixed loop, pardon my shadow, where you can apply a considerable amount of weight there and it won't move, but you can grab the knot itself and pretty easily adjust it. So if that was something that you needed to tighten down, or say if you've got a trucker's hitch, which we will discuss right here, cut. Right there, you've got it passed under a hook of some kind. Then as you move the knot up, it will tighten, and it will hold that. And if it happens to get overloaded, if you push on it too hard, it will adjust until it can bite again, and then it will hold there. Wonderful set of properties. I use this all the time. You could, if you wanted to, put two of these to make an adjusting necklace, although there are There are some knots that hold a little bit better for that purpose than that. Cut. Now, here's that great big long discussion that I've been building up to. Okay, so if you've been wondering why I'm choosing the rolling hitch for my essentials list instead of something like the clove hitch, the goal of my essentials list is if you're only going to learn a small handful of knots, those knots should be the best and most versatile knots you possibly can. Cut. So while many lists include the clove hitch, the close cousin to the rolling hitch, you see it has that wonderful property right there where it just pulls out straight. I don't really recommend it for the same kinds of uses. If you were to tie a boat with it, for example, it doesn't take weathering very well like the rolling hitch does. So if you try to tie up a boat with it, your boat is going to roam freely upon the seas without you by the time you get to the end of the pier. Okay, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's relied on most often because it's easy to teach people. The rolling hitch is just as easy to teach people, but it doesn't have the poor weathering features. Delicious product placement. Anyway, cut. I think with very little additional effort, just the one little extra turn, and making sure you're on the correct side of this standing end when you finish off with your half hitch. That altogether is not that much extra effort. There's no reason that you should use a clove hitch instead of this unless you have some very specific cut needs, which I'll talk about right here whenever that gets filmed, that the clove hitch is really, really good for. Most of the time, you want something else. Like the improved version of the other improved version of the clove hitch that comes to mind immediately is a constrictor hitch, which you'll find right here. Cut. With one exception, every knot on my essentials playlist has more than one use. Oftentimes, they are extremely versatile. Cut. The only time where there's any repeats of a purpose on my list of essentials is where the other forms of those knots serve very different functions. And so it might be useful to know both of them. But that is a very, very narrow selection. You can see from the list of buttons that's across the top right here, there's not that many entries in this essentials list. I'll talk more about those and all of this complaining about popular but terrible knots on the next video, which is going to be probably pretty long. Alright. If you liked my video, if you find any of the things that I talk about useful, give me a like. It raises my position in search results and increases the number of viewers that I get. That's very helpful to me. You could also subscribe. That, again, would be very helpful to me. Or something that's a little bit more direct in support is if you were to run over to my shop and pick one of these up. I'm inventing new patterns all the time. As you may have remembered from that Prusik butterfly accessory loop video, always coming up with new things. You never know what you might find there, and if you set me with an interesting knot tying challenge, either something that you want a video made about, a problem to solve, or if you want a paracord item with some particular properties, I am happy to oblige. I love filling challenges like that. It very much agrees with the need that I have deep in my soul to fill quest logs. Gamers will be very familiar with this. Okay. Thanks for watching.